Welcome into Sideline Sports, a Norfolk Cable interview series. I'm your host, Jaron May, and welcome to episode 3. If you're already on this one, that means that you probably know what we do here. We talk about how COVID-19 has impacted the youth sports in Norfolk, Grantham, and Plainville, and of course, King Philip High School sports. Today, I have a very, very special guest, the hard-hitting Coach Lee, Brian Lee, the head coach of the KP football team. He talks about his upcoming season, how his players have been dealing with COVID-19 over this summer, and kind of what it will look like this upcoming fall football season. So check out the interview. Welcome back into Sideline Sports. I'm your host, Jaron May, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Coach Lee, Brian Lee, the head coach of the King Philip football team. Coach, thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
So we're going to do a little rundown of what you've been doing with your players in the summer and how you're dealing with COVID with that, and then what hopefully your season will look like. But let's start with just an update on what you have been doing and how you have been handling all of this.
As far as, when it first hit, we were in school, obviously. We had already started our winter workouts with the boys, with the weight room and such. So once it became real that we were not getting back to school anytime soon, we went to started using Google Hangouts. We tried to do something, be creative, and do our workouts together on Google. And so it was really cool. And at a time when we were having no connections, and that's really how we build a team, is right, having connections, having see each other, encouraging, hold each other accountable. So when that was missing, there was a huge void. So it was kind of fun to get those Google Hangout workouts going. We had the grid view, everybody could see each other, kind of like, all right, who's missing, who's not, all that kind of stuff. We could still kind of have a little bit of normalcy there with that. And a lot of guys didn't have weights, so we had backpacks with rocks in them and all that kind of stuff going on. And it really got us through up until the summer basically came around.
So you talk about the chemistry in a football team, and especially at King Philip, that's something that you preach, and being a family, working together, and that's kind of how you have got 2 state championships under your belt. So how does COVID and not being in person kind of impact that, and how are you trying to fix that other than the Google Hangouts? Yeah,
well, it was just as you said, I always tell the guys, we're not better than everybody else. We try to outwork people, try to get an edge any way that you can. And also, because of that work, that builds chemistry, that builds a sense of, hey, when things get tough, we lean on each other more, all that stuff. So all that stuff is built in the off season. And when that was gone, it was really tough. So in addition to those Google workouts, once we got clearance, we were able to do a little bit now of, meeting at the school on the turf, but you have to be in groups of no more than 10. I have to have a mask on, and then the groups can't interact with each other, but they can see each other. So we're spread out on the field, if you can imagine that, in groups of like 5 to 10 guys, and each group has a leader. We communicate the workout with them, and so we're just kind of doing almost the same thing. We're not allowed to go in the weight room still, so that part's lacking. But at least now you've taken it to the next level of, all right, we still show up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We're working out together. We see who's there. We can yell across the field, hey, you're slacking, I can see you, pick it up, all that kind of stuff. So the interactions have definitely gone way up, and it's been a lot more positive for us.
Well, that's awesome. Have you seen basically everyone, like a normal type of participation with the majority of the players there? Has there been any type of decrease because guys are kind of nervous or afraid to go out in public?
I think it's more, that might be the case, but I think it's more, is there actually going to be a season? Some guys maybe are, say if there's 70 guys on a roster, we've got 45 to 50 guys that are there all the time that I see on a regular basis. And then there's those 20 guys that are, they're on the edge there. They're not 100% sure. And with the season being in doubt, I think, maybe they don't want to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning unless they know there's definitely going to be a season. And so I think that's a big part of it. But certainly, families have the right to do different things and to stay away from those workouts if they're not comfortable with it. We post the workouts on our Google Classroom, and they can do them on their own if they needed to or felt more comfortable doing it that way as well.
Now, I know in a normal year, in a normal summer, you obviously have the gut camps, which it seems like you're doing some type of gut camp, at least right now, just without the weights. You also usually go up to Maine or New Hampshire or Vermont for a week and spend a week at a camp and get that whole camaraderie going at that camp. Do you have the option to be able to do that this year, or is that all shut down?
That's pretty much all shut down. The camp that we usually go to, they're a girls' summer camp. They've been shut down for the summer as well. We have had normally what we do is we have passing league on Tuesday night, and then the linemen also get together. So we get together with some other towns, do some skills and drills, things like that, which is in compliance as long as you're within that 49% rule. So when you have other towns there. So we haven't had any opportunity to work football skills in any way. So we're way behind on that. I feel like we're in shape, but we are definitely behind on our football skills. So that's a huge setback if we're pushed back to September 14th. So when that day comes around, it's going to be the first time some of these guys have been catching the ball, first time some of these guys have been doing any kind of football, getting in a stance or any of that stuff, because we can't do that on our own. We have to be in with other towns, and getting that approved has been difficult so far.
Now, have you been able to talk to any of the other Hawk coaches, the other King Philip sports coaches, to see what they are doing? Do you know if any other towns are doing workouts like you in those pods of 10 and still trying to get some type of work in?
Yes. I've talked to, I'm so close, maintain a relationship with Walpole, and they were doing something similar to that. My buddy in Medfield, Millis, these towns, and then that are around us. And then just the other Hawk coaches that I talked to, we're all in the same boat, trying to find a way to do workouts. And that seems to be going well, but trying to find ways to get, kids together without breaking the rules is a hard thing. And also, without breaking the COVID rules and breaking football rules. So it's a kind of a double whammy you have to really pay close attention to, not put anybody in harm's way.
Right. Of course. And Brian Lee joining us here on Sideline Sports. Coach, I want to switch over to another part of how COVID kind of impacts your players, and that's the whole recruiting part of things. And as well as anybody, that the summer is really important because there are camps that these players will go to and try to show off their skills in front of college coaches. And this is really when they can kind of do that type of thing. But with the summer kind of shut down, what have your players been doing to try to get their name out there and get recruited to college?
It's, it's funny. I was just talking to a parent about the college process. And, if you're a D1, if you're a big time D1 recruit, by the time senior year comes in, you may have been already recruited and signed. Mm-hmm. But it's these kids that the D3s, the D2s, these bubble kind of kids that need either the first half of the season or need some more film. Some kids don't have any film. They're going to play D3 football or whatever. A lot of these guys don't play until their senior year. So that's really going to be a tough part of this whole recruiting thing for those guys. And as you mentioned, these, a lot of camps will have one-day camps. A lot of schools, I should say, bring in kids for one-day camps to look them over and whatnot. And as of right now, most of that's shut down. There was a little something at Taunton Four Kicks the other day. It's kind of like a recruiting type of showcase or whatnot. But again, those are not everybody's comfortable with that. You got kids from all towns. You don't know what everybody's doing. Nobody's got masks on. It's a little, it makes some people a little nervous. So to try to find those opportunities is tough. Right. If you have film from last year, you're really going off of that. You're selling yourself. You got to push that film from Huddle onto the coaches, let them know that you're interested, and try to find ways that if we have a season, great, they'll be able to showcase that. If we don't have a season, I think you're going to see a lot more of these recruiting type showcases at places like Four Kicks, or at a college has one and kids can go. But I think it really hurts the kids who need to play to show what they can do. Some kids can bench a lot or run real fast, but they can't play. And so you want to see them actually playing for college coaches.
Right, that makes sense. Now, the $1 million question, and I know this is extremely difficult and you would have to be a genie basically to answer it, but looking ahead, number one, do you think that there is a football season in high school? Number two, if there is, what kind of changes need to happen for that to be able to happen?
I think when you look at, we don't know how school is going to look. It becomes real hard to think about how sports are going to look. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be very difficult. So if we have a season, what needs to be changed? You're looking at everything, the busing, right? So you can't put 70 kids on 2 buses anymore. You're going to need 6 buses. Now that becomes a huge expense for the school. Do we have the locker room? Do we put 70 kids in a small? I don't think so. So I don't think there's going to be locker rooms. It's going to be like youth football where hey, we got a game at Mansfield. Show up and we'll see you there. It's going to be very different in that aspect. The preseason will be different. Obviously, we're not going to have camps. And so I think, your water, hey, it's a timeout, normally you just run out water. Now it's like, no, I have to have Billy's water. You can't share waters, and it's going to be chaos. Are the kids masked up? Is it just varsity? Do you have a travel squad? All these things that you've never really had to deal with are on the table, and that nobody really has those answers, which lends me to think, what's the easy thing to do when you have all those unknowns? Forget it, so I'm afraid that what we do, but I'm hoping that it doesn't happen. I thought they might change. Baseball's already playing a lot in the summer. I thought maybe they'd flop it, but that doesn't seem to be on the table anymore.
Well, those are some really good points that don't really come to your mind. I mean, you usually just think about in-game things, but you make a good point with the locker room, with the buses, a lot of logistical things that you don't first think about, but absolutely come into play. Hey, Coach, that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for hopping on and speaking with me this morning. Again, a very special thank you to Brian Lee, the head coach of the King Philip football team, for joining me here on Sideline Sports, a Norfolk Cable interview series. And a special thank you to you, as always, for tuning in and watching these videos. That's 3 down. We're going to make it to 4 next week. Make sure you come back and check that one out to learn about how COVID-19 is impacting all of the sports in our local area. But for this one, Jaron May signing off for NCTV.